Welcome to Talk Learning with me. I'm Joseph Diaz, an instructional designer passionate about connecting with others and exploring the field of learning and development. In this podcast, we dive into topics like education, learning science, facilitation, behavior change, and other skills related to personal and professional growth. If you're looking to connect with other lifelong learners and discover new insights from talented learning professionals, this show is for you. Today's guest is Aaron Mendoza, a product marketer and longtime friend of mine. Aaron has a unique ability to connect dots between product, sales, and customer needs. And in this conversation, we unpack what product marketing really is, how it overlaps with enablement and instructional design, and what it means to be a strategic quarterback inside of a business. We also talk about the power of storytelling, how to research customer pain points, and the role product marketers play in driving go-to-market strategy. Whether you're in learning and development, product, or sales enablement, this episode offers practical insights into how learning and business strategies work together. On that note, let's talk product marketing. Aaron, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Doing fantastic. It's great to see you. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you, talk a little bit about product marketing. We've had a lot of conversations in the past about some of the similarities and overlap between the work that you do as a product marketer and the stuff that I do in instructional design, working in sales enablement. And so before we get into things, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background? How did you get into product marketing?
Yeah, totally. So I grew up in Kansas City, and in Kansas City, it's the Midwest. And so I think we all have the mindset of live small, but dream big. And so I've always, I've always loved talking to people. I've always loved thinking creatively. And so I think that's where I gravitated towards the business route of things. It was something that, I changed my major, I think 6 times in college. And then I picked marketing eventually. And then everyone asked me, well, what do you want to do with marketing? And then it's like, oh, it's a whole nother thing to figure out. And so I knew that I loved the creative side of things. I loved the strategy. So ultimately led me towards product marketing. I had an internship in college in product management. And so that was where I was first exposed to product marketing. And then from there, just continued to do some research and network, do some informational interviews. And that's what ultimately led me to where I am today.
Okay, that is so cool. And for context, for those who don't know who you are, or don't know how I know you, you and I were roommates. So I totally remember both of us going through all of those career changes. And I remember talking to you about, well, what's your major now? And both of us not being sure. And then seeing you figure it out and study marketing and really chase after that dream. And so that's really cool to hear how even from a young kid growing up thinking about how can I dream big? How can I get involved with business? I love working with people. It sounds like product marketing ended up being that way for you to get your foot in the door and connect with people in the way that you love and also be a part of a business.
Totally. Yeah, it's something I'm really passionate about. I think, it's a space that is pretty new, relatively, not something that, was around. I mean, it's been around for a long time in theory, but the actual title and structure it's newer in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, that's really neat. You mentioned that you started actually in product management. Is that right? And then that was what kind of introduced you to the world of product marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, product marketers and product managers are two peas in a pod. You can't have one without the other. They're so critical. That relationship is probably the most critical in product marketing. And so, yeah, firsthand was able to see what the life of a product marketer was like and how they work with product management.
Okay, that is super cool. And that actually leads right into the question I wanted to follow up with, that you mentioned that product managers and product marketers are two peas in a pod. So on your side of the pod as the product marketer, I'd love to hear a little bit about what does your typical day look like as far as responsibilities, the things you find yourself doing?
Yeah, so I think to take a quick step back, product marketing in itself is storytelling, right? It's the process of taking products to market and making sure they stay there. And so the day in the life of a product marketer, it looks different at every company, but the core responsibilities, there's a lot of overlap in what product marketers do. And so regular syncs with cross-functional teams, product, sales, customer success, marketing, you name it, right? The product marketers are kind of the glue in a business. They help keep the engine running. They work with all these different groups to make sure that we're hitting goals and objectives, and everyone has different priorities. So you might have a weekly sync with your product manager. You might talk to sales, you might talk to, some of these other teams and just check in, see how things are going. With product management, it's, the roadmap, trying to understand timelines and when you could expect something to be released, and who do we release it to and when, and what phases of a release do we have. With sales, it's how do we sell this product? How do we talk about it? What do we highlight? What benefits are we trying to focus on? With customer success, it's more customer pain point focused. And okay, now it's been launched, and what's the feedback? What are we hearing? What's going on there? And so, yeah, lots of conversations that you have with these different groups. And then, you also will be creating resources too, either internal resources or external, depending on your organization. It really just depends on if you're a one man band, or if you have other product marketers, or if you're at a big company, you're at a startup. It's going to look a little bit different for everybody, but generally speaking, those are some core things that product marketers focus on.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I can see how, as somebody who loves working with people, loves having conversations, loves connecting, that getting to be the glue of a product would be the perfect fit for somebody like you, where you get to come in and, like you said, collaborate with sales teams, other product marketers, product managers, and really helping make sure that the story of a product comes to life. And that was something that really stood out to me, was you mentioned that product managers are the ones who are looking at the roadmap as far as the product goes, what maybe features are coming next, what updates are we making. And you said that you, as the product marketer, you really like being the storyteller. And so I'm curious, that definition of being a storyteller, what experiences helped you kind of come to that conclusion, or that definition of storytelling being that distinction between product management and product marketing?
Yeah, so big part of product management is what to build and how to build it. And the what to build is a joint effort. Product marketers have a say, right? They have a seat at the table in the research that they're doing and delivering those insights to the product manager. Then from there, the product manager is figuring out how do we build this, and when do we release this? And the product marketer then takes that and runs with it, right? You could have the coolest product in the world. It could address every single pain point that you have, but if no one knows the benefits of it, it's not gonna hit, right. It's not gonna land with the target audience. And so that's where product marketing comes in, and it gets really fun, because you could talk about something as simple as a pen that's really simple, right? Has one function, but it's the classic sales pitch, and being able to take that pen and really craft a message around it and help them see it's not just a writing tool, but you can, make things permanent, and you can have it be in this color, and really bring that to life. And all of a sudden it starts to feel like a more valuable tool than just a simple item. And so I think that is true across, product marketing, whatever you're marketing, whatever service or product you're marketing, it all is encompassing in storytelling.
Yeah, that sounds like a really fun challenge. And I can only imagine seeing you get all the different products or features. And I imagine they're probably more exciting than a pen, as cool of a device as it is. But that's a really cool challenge to think about. Okay, this is the product. This is the feature that was just developed. Now I'm the one responsible for crafting the story and figuring out how to communicate the value, the benefits to the people that are going to be interacting with that product. And you just started a new role recently at Bill as a product marketer. I'm curious, what does the day to day look like for you as a product marketer at Bill? And what are some of the stories that you're crafting or that you find yourself working on?
Yeah. So first of all, Bill, for those who aren't familiar, is a financial operations company. So you think accounts payable, accounts receivable, being able to pay and receive payment from vendors or customers that you're working with. And then we have another side of our business called spend and expense. And so you think about going out for team lunches, or just things you need to go buy for an event or something, or travel, right? There's that side of the financial operations as well, right? So we're trying to essentially be this one-stop shop where you can do all the things in your world to make sure you know everything that's going in and out of your company. So for me specifically, there's a lot of different products and services that we have. And there's a lot of product marketers. Bill's a very large organization. And so with that, everyone owns, maybe a part of a product, or maybe even a full part of the product. But you go to a startup and it's a product, or you might be managing multiple products, right, yourself. And you go to a large organization, and it's more niche. You're focused on a specific aspect of a product or a set of features, or what have you. And so typically kind of like I outlined earlier, there are conversations you have with a lot of different teams. It's very cross functional. We also have people in 42 states working for our company. We have an office in San Jose, the headquarters, and then an office in Draper, Utah, and that's it. And so you have people in all different time zones, and you're trying to work with them and collaborate and connect with them. We have people working overseas as well, and so you have lots of opportunities to connect with people and understand what's important to them. And so I'm only a few weeks in, so haven't been able to dive in super deep at this point. But yeah, I'd say relationships has been a key part in my short time here, is trying to get to know what everyone's working on, what their core responsibilities are, and how we can be partners together in order to launch products and features.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And I can't wait to hear as the weeks go on, as the months go by, to hear about the products and features that you're responsible for. And I think that's some really helpful context that you gave, comparing different sizes of companies and even industries. That at a small company, at a startup, it's going to be scrappier. And you might have one product marketer for an entire business, maybe, responsible for every single product, every single offering. And as a business grows, then you start to get opportunities to have additional product marketers. So maybe you don't own the entire product, but a specific feature or a part of a product. And so I think that's really helpful context to think, as somebody is looking at the work of a product marketer, you have to recognize, if I want to be the jack of all trades and wear a bunch of different hats, going to a really large organization might not be the right fit, because while you'll still get to collaborate with lots of people, the amount of pots you're going to have your hand in is going to be limited, because you're going to have to focus on, this is your product, this is your responsibility. Whereas at a smaller organization, it sounds like you could be really heavily involved and across the entire company, even getting to make sure you understand everything that's going on all sides. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because the previous product marketing role that I had, I was wearing a lot of hats, right? I was doing competitive intel, I was doing the research, I was doing user interviews, I was doing sales enablement materials, all these different things. And then in this role, there's a sales enablement team, there's a competitive intel team, there's, if you have like pricing for a product, a lot of big companies have a pricing team. And so you'll hear product marketers sometimes say, oh, I really want to learn more about this aspect of product marketing, because they're not getting it in their current role, and not necessarily that the role they have is bad. It's just the structure of the company, the products that they're in, right? The team, and so they want to go maybe to a larger company. But in that instance, you might be a competitive intel product marketer, and so you're focused on competitive intel, and you might not touch the other parts of product marketing as much as you would in a different role, right? A smaller company. And so yeah, it really depends on what you're looking for. But yeah, if there's certain skill sets that you're looking to develop in product marketing, then that helps in your career development to figure out what role, what company, what size makes the most sense for me to really grow and stretch myself.
Yeah, I love that. And I can see how having more specific skills could maybe lend themselves to really boost you to grow more at a large company, where you're really, really specific at, like you said, maybe intel, or you talked about doing research. Maybe you really just want to hone in and do research, talk with customers, understand their needs, understand their pain points. If you really, really want to hone in on that, maybe a bigger organization's a great place for that. Whereas if you want to be doing a little bit of everything, then you can maybe step back and say, I want a little bit of everything. I should look at an organization where that's going to be possible for me. So I think that's really insightful. And before we started recording, you knew that we were going to be talking about, what is product marketing? What does it mean? And you even kind of posed the question, that is product marketing the right name for the work and for the role? And so I'm just curious, you talked about storytelling, you talked about doing research. Would you say that you have maybe a different idea in your mind of what product marketing should be called, or what it could be called, or is that the right fit?
Yeah, so I think when people think product marketing, and I'm speaking more just the outside looking in, like someone who's not familiar with product marketing, they tend to think that we are marketers. And that is true to an extent, right? There are things that we are creating product marketers' own messaging and positioning. So really being able to speak to, where do we fit in the market, and also how do we talk about our product. And so that's a core part, and that is marketing in a sense, right? But you're not always the one that's going in and executing the messaging and positioning, right? So what I mean by that is, you're not going and necessarily creating an email campaign or a social media campaign. There's probably a team for that, depending on your organization, that is actually the one that's running with that. But you're kind of the quarterback and you have different people, right, who own different things, and you're calling out different plays, right? You're telling them, hey, I need you here and I need you here, and I'm going to find you and I'm going to help you and we're going to work together. And so then you sit down together after a launch and you talk about the impact of that launch. And so I think a term that's more fitting for product marketing is go to market strategist. It really spells out, right? Product marketers are go to market experts. It's not the only thing that product marketers do, but they are responsible for helping a product or feature, right, launch and be able to go into the market. And then once it's there, figure out what customers are saying, understand the voice of the customer, and really figure out, how do we pivot? Do we tweak our messaging? Do we change our pricing? Do we change, the packaging of this pricing tier? There's a lot of adjustments that you can make, and that all comes from conversations you're having with customers. But it really comes down to that strategy, right? Product marketing is very strategic, and not to say that marketing or other aspects in a company are not strategic, but you really are kind of all high level, trying to think about the big picture and then figure out, how do we take that vision and implement it through across these different teams and make sure that we can get the product to resonate with our target market.
Yeah, I love that. I can see how valuable this role of a product marketer is to making sure that after all of the work goes into creating a product, it's actually used, it's well received, and it's meeting its function. And I love the sports analogy you made of being a strategic quarterback, because I see a lot of that in the work that I do myself as a sales enabler right now, that sometimes I'm not necessarily the one making the whole play happen, but I'm strategically working as the quarterback. That, all right, we have a new process that's going to roll out to our technicians. And so I'm not necessarily going to be the one executing everything, but I am sitting down with people and saying, okay, what is the new process? I'm sitting down with our subject matter experts and saying, help me understand what's the learning objective. And then I'm strategically working and figuring out, is this information going to be delivered via instructor led training? Is this going to be delivered in person? Is this going to be a workshop that's going to have a series of different calls? Or is this going to be just a one pager job aid that people will be referring to as they're doing their job? What is the method of delivery? And then strategizing. And then sometimes I do my part as the quarterback, and then I pass it off to somebody else who, they might be the trainer, they might be the one delivering the information, or maybe a graphic designer takes some of that knowledge and makes it look way better than I ever could, and then gets that job aid in front of people. So I love that analogy of kind of being a strategist. You talked about being the quarterback. You're definitely a playmaker, but you're not necessarily always the one who gets things across the finish line, but you are collaborating across departments, across teams. So that's a really, really helpful analogy, at least for me, to get a better sense of what is product marketing, and kind of how you come to that understanding of what it is and what you want to see yourself doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are a lot of parallels between what you just said and what product marketing is like. In sales enablement, you're trying to create these resources that help the sales team sell the product or service, right? Really make sure that they are your target audience in that sense, right? They're the ones that are receiving on the receiving end of what you're creating. It's the same as true as product marketing. The messaging that you put together that then trickles its way down to the customer and ends up on a website or in a asset that was created or on a sales call, that's the target audience. And if they're not getting the message, then you need to make an adjustment as well. And so, yeah, I think that, like you said, I think that it's important wherever you are in a company to really find your role and how it impacts other roles. And so I like to collaborate with a lot of different people and just understand what their goals are, because what my priorities aren't necessarily the same priorities for someone else. They might tie together, but how they are decided upon, you really need to understand what's important to someone else, because that will help you get the best out of that relationship and be able to drive your goals that you're striving for, and also see where they want to, push on their end and meet their own goals.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned making sure we're meeting the needs of the people that we work with. And you've talked about doing research and going out there and really making sure. I spent all this time creating an asset or a resource. Maybe in my case, I'm creating an e-learning or a training course, but then it's so important to make sure we do that after work and follow up and check and see, is this meeting the need? Are people getting the content or the information or the understanding that they need? And if not, then what needs to change, what needs to happen. And so I'm curious, Have there been specific experiences that you've had in your career that have really shaped your understanding of that research and of product marketing? Maybe you've seen something across your different roles or across different projects that you've worked on?
Yeah, so I think that sometimes when we're building a new product, we build a product based on what we think the customer will like. And I think it's a dangerous place to be in because it could line up with the customer, and sometimes it does, and sometimes there is some overlap. But the question that you really want to understand is what is the customer's needs, right? What is at the root? What is something that they can't do, but with your product or solution that they will be able to do or do better, or do more efficiently? And so we conduct a lot of user interviews as product marketers, right? And really try to dive deep and understand the mind of the customer, what they're thinking, how they're trying to go about navigating their circumstances. I can give you an example on like a personal level. So
Yeah.
you and I are both big Apple guys, right? We love Apple products.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I had siblings with an Apple Watch, I had friends with Apple Watch, and I just didn't want one. I just didn't think that I would use it. It didn't seem like something that I really wanted to do. I thought my phone was enough to keep track on messages, and I was able to go to the gym and see on the treadmill or whatever the calories that I was burning. And so for me, it was a world that didn't really make sense. The moment I got one, I realized that it addressed problems I didn't know I had. And I think that that's the same is true with a SaaS product or whatever solution you're selling. There may be people who aren't searching on Google for a specific solution at that moment in time, but maybe an ad comes across when they're browsing and they think it looks interesting and they're curious about it. And the more they dive deeper, they realize, oh, wait, this is something that would make my life easier. In the case of the Apple Watch, yes, I was able to survive and do my thing without it. But the moment I had it, I realized how much simpler it made my life in terms of tracking my health goals and staying connected to messages if my phone wasn't nearby, and just having a way to keep on the go, essentially, right? And so I think continuing with this example, a lot of times people think, oh, for my product, I need to think about the competition. What is the competition doing that I'm not? And I think it's a very important thing that I've seen throughout my career. But I think the other piece that you can't forget about is what's the alternative to my product or solution, right? It's not just it's us versus the competition. In my case, I wasn't looking at Apple Watch versus Garmin or other smartwatches. I was looking at how my life is today and how my life would be with an Apple Watch. And so I think that's a big part of product marketing. And I've seen this with different launches where, maybe there wasn't as much research done ahead of time. We built what we thought was best for the customer. And then after the fact, through interviews and surveys and other mediums of collecting information, we realized, oh, they're using this in a way that we didn't intend them to use, or it doesn't seem like what we built actually addresses the real problem. And so you never want to be in a situation where you invest a ton of resources and time in building something that is not designed for the customer. And you don't want to only build what the customer asks you to build either. You want to do your thorough research, understand your resources, and understand what's been built before, and do market research too, not just customer research. Don't just talk to your customer base and build what they want to hear. Find out what's in the market and find out what's not, and find those gaps that you can, create your own path and build something that no one's doing. And so I think that between customer and market research, you really do get a full picture of, okay, this is what we should build. And we might build something that the customer didn't necessarily ask for, but then they find out that they will benefit from it. And in this case, I never asked for an Apple Watch. I wasn't ever, every week just like, please, bring an Apple Watch to the market. But the moment it was there and I started using it, it was something that was a pain I didn't know I had and was being addressed in a way that I never would have thought of. And so, yeah, I think great ideas come from thorough research.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I had thoughts on two things that you talked about. Firstly, being not just looking at what your competitors are doing, because maybe in learning and development, I'm not necessarily looking at competitors, but maybe I'm looking at what other companies are doing or other teams are doing. And it's easy to look and see, oh, somebody's using AI generated video or such and such tool or platform to create learning. So maybe I need to chase after that too. And you talked about how just because a competitor is doing something, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right fit. Maybe I get so caught up in chasing after a new tool, a new AI course creating tool, and I go down that rabbit hole and it's not at all what my people needed. And so instead, really focusing on what do they need. Maybe they really just need a simple job aid or a simple resource. And I was thinking about how you talked about doing that research and seeing what really pans out for people. And I've been on both sides of having really, really delighted learners or customers, and then also people that weren't so thrilled. On one hand, I remember creating a virtual course that was supposed to be instructor led. And I thought that I had worked with subject matter experts to just gather all of the most helpful information. It was all really organized. We were going to overcome all kinds of customer objections. And then we got on that first call and everyone was super mad and they didn't want to be there. And they just felt like, I don't even know why I'm here. I don't see the value to this course. What are we doing? This feels like a waste of my time. And so I had put in all this effort to develop this online instructor led course that I thought was going to be a huge hit. And the attendees just, they weren't thrilled to be there. And so I had to learn from that and figure out, okay, what's a more effective and efficient way to get them the information that they need. But on the other hand, you talked about, I didn't know I wanted an Apple Watch. I didn't think I needed one. And then it came. And I remember from some simple user interviews, I found out that a lot of our technicians had a hard time getting access to the right phone numbers that they needed to call support from the home office. And so we put together a little directory. We worked across teams. And I remember the first user interview that we did. And I showed the directory to one of our technicians and said, just so you know, we organized all the phone numbers and now you can call anybody you need for help. And he was blown away. He was so excited, and it was silly. Like from my perspective, I thought all we did was organize phone numbers. But like you talked about, Aaron, you said it's a pain point that they didn't know they had. They didn't realize how frustrating it was to text around and try and search and find a phone number. And when we put it all in one directory, they were super excited. It met that pain point of, I don't have to go digging around looking for somebody's phone number. I know exactly where to go to. So I love that connection of making sure we're focused on what do my people need? What do my customers need? What do my learners need? I think that really makes a huge difference and is going to help is going to be a better measure of success for us as product marketers or learning designers when we focus on what do my people need.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's at the root of everything that we do is, it's the core of any business. You don't have a business without your customers. And so make sure you build something that resonates with them.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm curious, Aaron, if somebody wanted to learn more about product marketing, you've learned a lot over the years across different roles, from different mentors and resources. If somebody wanted to learn more about product marketing, where would you recommend that they go to learn more?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, the Product Marketing Alliance is the place to be for a product marketer. If you're in product marketing or you're looking to get into product marketing, that's a great place to start. Product marketing is one of those interesting careers where it's not like you can get a degree in maybe now there's some, universities that have product marketing degrees or, like a discipline that you can focus on, but it's not something that you typically get into immediately after college. You typically get, other experience, maybe adjacent experience, and you move your way into it. But yeah, if you're at like a startup, you can assume the role of product marketing. If it's not being done, I think that's a great way to get into it and get into the space that way. If you're at another company that has product marketing, talk to the product marketers there, learn what they do, understand their day to day, understand what your role is and how it could work with them. I think that's another great way. And then just learning, right, through podcasts. There's a podcast I love. It's Positioning with April Dunford. She's like the icon in product marketing. She's like the Renee Brown for social workers, essentially, but in the product marketing world. She's great. There's a lot of other good product marketing podcasts that the Product Marketing Alliance or the PMA has put out that I like. And then just networking. I know you and I talked about this a little while back, but I think that some people are so focused on networking when they need a job, when they need an opportunity. It's so much better to network when you don't need that opportunity. When you're just curious, you genuinely want to know about someone's life, about their role, about their career path. A goal that I set last year in light of the new year and talking about goals. Last year, I set a goal to talk to a product marketer at least once a month. Or I guess I changed the goal halfway through the year. That's allowed, but it was supposed to be a week, and then as time went on, your life just gets kind of crazy. But I only missed a couple weeks throughout the year, and really it was through the Product Marketing Alliance. There's a Slack channel, and you can meet a lot of product marketers that way. I also just followed a lot of product marketing influencers and saw who was commenting on their posts and just engaged with them. And so I, connect to people on LinkedIn and doing those calls. I think you learn so much about not just how to get into product marketing if you're not in it, but also just what product marketing looks like at different companies and what that whole experience looks like. And then I guess lastly, to put in a plug for some books, anything by April Dunford. Again, gonna plug her again. She's great. Make It Punchy by Emma Stratton. She is so you've got April is the go-to for positioning. Emma's the go-to for messaging, being able to talk about, how to sell your product really and speak to the language you're using. She uses a framework called value, benefit, feature. I think a lot of people love to sell the feature, but best advice I can give anyone is to sell the benefits, right? The feature will sell itself if you sell the benefits. No one cares if you're talking about all these, technical terms and that doesn't mean anything to anyone. They care about how it's going to save them time or money or, is going to make their life easier. She has this whole mantra of if you can't talk about it at a family barbecue in the language that you're speaking, don't talk about it with the customer. And so I love that. I think it's such a cool way to think about how to talk to customers and really speak to that. So yeah, I would say through a lot of those events, Product Marketing Alliance also has conferences across the country. So no matter where you live, even in the world, they're global. So yeah, I think having in-person interactions with other product marketers too goes a long way.
Yeah, that's super cool. First, I love that you pointed out that networking, oftentimes people hear that word and they just think, well, I don't need a job right now, so there's no reason to network. But that's the most untrue thing because there's just so much value, whether you're just learning and getting better at the current work that you do and just getting new perspectives. It's so insightful to network with people and community, like you mentioned, the Product Marketing Alliance. Having a community where you can go to is an easy way to get your foot in the door and just connect with people who are like-minded, who are in the same realm of either work or maybe interests of what you're doing. So I love that call out. The books, the podcasts, I'll be sure to link all of those in the show notes for everybody. And going off of networking, if people want to network with you, Aaron, learn more about the work that you're doing and learn more about product marketing from you, where can people connect? Where can they find Aaron Mendoza?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn is probably the best place. Just Aaron Mendoza. Just look me up, and I've got a suit and tie in my picture, so hopefully you can find me. But yeah, and one thing I would comment on too with that is I think everyone tends to be afraid to cold DM someone they don't know on LinkedIn. But the reality is everyone loves talking about themselves, and not in a conceited way, but more just they're excited about when someone reaches out and wants to talk to them about what they're most passionate about, right? And so reaching out to someone, like chances are, like there might be people who don't respond, but generally speaking, most people would love to help because someone helped them get to where they are. And so I think that that's such a huge part. And I'm the same way. So all that is to say, if you end up, finding me on LinkedIn and want to learn more about product marketing, shoot me a note. Would love to chat and talk about my experience in my journey and any other questions that you have.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It might seem weird sending that cold message and just hoping someone responds. I personally just a couple weeks ago got a message from someone. They said, "Hey, I saw your profile. I'm interested in sales enablement. Would love to chat." That totally made my day. I was super pumped. I was excited to have a conversation with them. So for those listening, if they want to, that's my challenge. Go shoot Aaron Mendoza a connection request, send him a message, tell him he looks handsome in his suit and talk product marketing with him. But Aaron, it has been such a pleasure having this conversation with you. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. Good to see you.
That wraps up our conversation with Aaron Mendoza. I hope this episode gave you a better understanding of how product marketers help bring new ideas to market and how their work parallels what many of us do in learning and development. From collaborating across departments to crafting messaging that sticks, Aaron gave us a masterclass in strategic thinking and customer-focused communication. If you're curious about product marketing, be sure to check out the resources Aaron mentioned, from April Dunford's books to the Product Marketing Alliance. I'll link everything in the show notes, and if you're looking to connect with Aaron, you can find him on LinkedIn. He's the handsome one in the suit and tie, ready to talk shop. Thanks again for listening to Talk Learning with me, and if you enjoyed today's episode, Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with someone who might find it helpful. And we'll talk soon.